stuff. Like, you're not going to make it nowhere. You doubt yourself. They got all this stuff, and it's just piling up on to what they're already thinking. They think if they vote, then, oh, it's still not going to matter. Why should I be the one saying this if you're going to keep telling me I can't do this, I can't make it nowhere, and these people are getting in because of me? Like, it makes them feel as though even if they put it in, it's not going to change a thing.
Powerless.
How many people here think that their vote doesn't matter by raising hands? Those are some of the people I really would like to hear from. But why do you think that?
Well, you know.
Yeah, come up a little bit.
Like Casey lying.
Alright, so I believe that stuff. Wait,
You want me to repeat the question?
No. Alright, so I believe that everything's rigged in a certain way. So even when you try to, voice your opinions, they, I guess, automatically get overthrown by, the higher uppers, the elites in the world, Bilderberg, all those organizations that operate in secret stuff. So, yeah.
I disagree. I disagree because I believe, and from what our predecessors had done, segregation and beforehand, I believe that as a society as a whole, I think one person can take charge and actually believe that one person should actually should represent them as far as a mayor, president, city council, whoever the case may be. I think if you can actually push and actually try to educate and convince people to actually try to vote. I mean, of course, everything's not fair. Of course, there will be certain times where something may be rigged or something, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't vote. I think you should, no matter what, you should voice your opinion. And if you want something to actually happen and you want to take action, then you should, like I said, educate people. And you should take other people into your hands just so you can make sure that whoever you want to represent you or anything that you want to happen, you should try to convince people and try to take action instead of just standing on the sidelines and being all pessimistic, being a pessimist, saying oh, this may happen or this might happen. You can't live life like that. You can't be a woulda, coulda, shoulda person. That's how you're gonna turn into. So I think you should always take action and be direct.
I think for the people who don't think that your votes matter, you really do, because now our generation, we see. We're not talking about just the voting policies. We're talking about teenagers our age are going out doing stuff they shouldn't. And we feel as though where there's older people telling us that we're going to grow up doing this or we're going to do drugs. In order for us to make a change, you have to vote. No matter, even you could be really young. I've seen little kids going to say, I want to vote. But even you saying that little thing can also help people, inspire people. Because when they hear it from a younger age and you saying that you want to vote, that you want to make a change, you got to step up and do it. You can't doubt yourself because what the world's telling you. You got to actually go out.
Hi, how you doing? My name is Malik. I can teach a cinematography class. And I'm relatively young, old, whatever you want to call them. Well, what I like to explain is that my experience with voting is I voted because I knew that Martin Luther King and so others have fought for our rights to vote. I did it for that reason simply. I didn't know why. I didn't honestly think that it really mattered, but I did it anyway. Now, what I actually did recently was I voted, but this time around I actually took note of who I voted for, and I held them accountable. So I actually paid attention to those people. So I kind of just went in there. Sometimes they give you the tag, the ticket to tell you who you should vote for. And I said, you know what, this time I'm gonna go. I'm gonna vote for you, but I'm gonna hold on to this ticket, and I'm gonna remember everybody that I voted for, and I'm gonna remember it, and I'm gonna pay attention to it, so that I can inform myself of what it is that you did or didn't do in representation of myself and the community at large. So that was how I integrated myself into the voting process and became a lot more familiar with the political, realm within my community and abroad. So I suggest that might be an option for those of you who feel that your vote doesn't matter. It's probably because you don't really understand or know what you're voting for. But it might take that first election or two for you to get acclimated to who the candidates are. And then after a while, you'll hear a name and you'll know it off the bat. You'll be like, oh, I'm not voting for that person because I know that they don't stand for what I believe in. Or I won't vote for them again. Or I will vote for them because they did everything that I believed in. They followed all of what they suggested that they would do in their campaign, and I intend to not only vote for them, but advocate for others to vote for them because I'm now endorsing them. I'm now passionate about who they are because I now did my research, more proactively now. So the first time is going to be reactive. You're just going to be voting. You're just going to be kind of eeny, meeny, miny, mowing first. But then after that, you educate yourself going forward. That's what worked for me. And I've probably been voting. Well, I don't want to tell my age, but I voted a few times. Let's just say that. And
I think that our votes don't really matter. I think they made just to make us think that we have that little bit of power to do something in society. Because if they don't turn and ask us what should we do if some other country was bombing us, why would they give us the option to decide who should be in charge of us, which is something a little like a bigger situation?
Can I just piggyback on something both of you said, you and the other young man in the back, when you talked about one vote, and also what he said. You're right in the sense that one vote does not necessarily matter, especially if that one vote is made in a way that's not educated. What's important for our community and what our ancestors fought for was to have people who represent our interests. And so one vote may not necessarily change that, but what is important and what the civil rights movement, I think, taught us and continues to teach us is that when you have one voice and one vote, and then that one voice starts to talk to other voices in the community who have the same interests and the same representation that they want, and then those voices talk to other voices, we as a community or a group, we tend to vote in blocks for people who are going to represent our interests, and who are going to stand for what we stand in, and who are going to do the things that we need done. So it's not only important to go into a voting booth and push a button, not necessarily knowing who that person is, but to educate yourself about who the candidates are, who are going to do the things that you need them to do. You want better education, as this young lady said earlier, a better quality education, a better quality in terms of our community and the things that we want in our community, who are going to be the voice that speaks for us. We need to see who these individuals are, what they stand for, what their record shows that they stand for, because they can say anything out of their mouth, but really the proof is in the pudding and in what you've done in the past. What does your record say about how you feel about me and what you're going to do for me? And if we vote in blocks, and we tell people in our families and in our communities, this is the person I see who's doing what needs to be done, then that sets off a momentum that continues. And it's not just one vote that matters, but community activism is very, very, very powerful. And if we as a community really learned about who people are, really voted in ways that really would promote our interests, we can make changes. I don't think we should feel that we are powerless and that it doesn't matter. We can make changes every single election cycle if we know who the people are and if we are really making moves to vote for people who are going to help us. So certainly he's right in saying we need to educate ourselves. Oftentimes, and I've been voting for a very long time, probably way longer than him. I'm almost 45, so I've been voting for 20 plus years. And every time you go to the voting booth, you get some person in the community, some committee person who works for the party. Oh, here's who you should vote for. Well, nobody should be telling you who to vote for. and especially in this age where it's so easy to get information through social media, through the internet, through papers. Information is everywhere. People's records are everywhere. You can find out who they are just by the click of your computer keys. You can decide who to vote for. Don't let anybody else tell you what you should do. But by that same token, when you become educated, it really is imperative that you start to educate other people. Everybody's not necessarily going to take the initiative to go on the internet to read, but it's our duty to educate everybody else in our community to make our community stronger. So I think it's important. Maybe one vote doesn't change everything, but a lot of votes can. And the power of what Obama did in his last 2 elections shows that what can happen when you have a groundswell and a movement going. So young ladies. Either one.
I would like to piggyback off what you and my dad does this. He follows on every campaign. If there's a campaign he missed, he'll watch it on YouTube and like take notes of what one person says against the other. And I forgot what it's called, like they'll try to dirty each other up with like false information. Like you said, do background checks. Like your vote, you not voting can depict whether a person who we want in office wins or loses. That one vote could mean could mean yes or no. So you saying that your vote doesn't count? It's not true. Like your vote can really depict who really gets into office. So you're not giving your vote could say, well, just give it to the other person who will not fight for what we need. With like we need like some to do like electoral votes and everything else. Those votes matter. If you don't vote, then you're just giving away your vote for what? Voting for, like when we had the Obama election, I know it's a massive boom of people going to the polls. Not because of we wanted a change, just wanted a change, but we want to have a first black president. That motivation should be there, period. Just that yearn of we want change, we need our economy to improve. Just that yearn, and the politician, period, should engage us into going to the polls, not because we have our first black president. That should not matter. Just the point of we need change, we want change, and our voices, if my voice counts of whether or not I want my community to strive, better education, more money in budgets, because we're having budget cuts because of people who's in power, because of our votes. So we pretty much depict how our education goes, how our society will strive, and how society will go on, depending on our votes.
So based on the people who are our elected officials, what do you all think that they feel about education and students here in Philadelphia?
I don't think they really care, because looking at the budget cuts and them cutting off schools where kids need education, they talk about they don't have money, but they have all these casinos, these other big businesses that we don't need. Why don't you just start getting what we do need? Y'all talk about y'all need people for jobs. People can't get the education, you can't get your job. Them casinos, that's gonna be people that already work, already have the money. For the teenagers coming out for college, starting college, they can't even afford to go to college, so they don't know what to do. They do drugs, they go run the streets, they killed, and that's where all the violence kicks in. But I think that if they really cared about our education, they would step up and do something. I was able to go see some of the mayors who were going to run and actually sit up there and hear their debate, what they wanted to do. But I felt as though they saying this stuff now, but are you really going to step up and help our education? And that was a big topic they had up there, but they never, when they actually get into that power, they never actually come in and do anything for us. And I feel like if you're in power, you shouldn't even be up there if you're not going to do something for everybody instead of yourself.
I want to piggyback off of what she said. Like, I just watched a video today of like a rate of how many kids drop out of high school, and I think education is key, and that's like number one thing we need to like be successful. So I do think like we should start putting money more into like education in schools instead of all these other McDonald's and all these other fast food places and all that. Because education is the most important.
There's a person over here that I don't want to.
Alright, I just wanted to say, I do agree that education is a big problem, but another big problem that I think the community, the black community as a whole. I don't think that when we was talking about Selma earlier, when we was talking about the civil rights movement, I don't think we don't have the motivation to vote as much as the people back in the civil rights era. So when we talk about black people voting, it's like they're not doing it. They're not doing it because they don't have no motivation to do it. Like what Kennedy said earlier about Barack Obama, that gave black people motivation. I do feel like education is a problem because I feel that there's way too much money going into prisons, and I think more of that money should be going into education. But I think the number one key is us as a community coming together and believing that we can make a change.
I agree when you talk about the prisons, because I saw this video and there was a paper about it based on statistics, like based on your reading level in the 3rd grade, that makes the government think about how many prisons they're going to make in the future. And I think that's real messed up, because why not put more money into schools so you can try to counteract that instead of creating more prisons? Because if you create more prisons, that's more problems. And if you decrease the money that you put into schools, then of course that's creating more problems, and it's creating more people the ability of people able to get jobs, the ability of people to do a lot of stuff, and for us to be able to evolve as not only a community but as a nation. And I think that this is like a plague or something, because if we can't put money into schools and we could put money into all these other places, then it's just only going to have a negative effect on our community as a whole in the future, because as they say, the children is the future and education is key. So if we don't have the education and we are the children, we are the future, then what future will we have? That can only lead to more violence, because if we have all these impoverished schools, then what can we do?
I agree with Dominic and her. With her, she made the point that we have a lot of stuff that we don't need that's going to really not, like a lot of non-essential stuff than what really does matter. I agree with her. And with Dominic, I agree with him, because I've heard that the reason why they're building and then putting money into more prisons is because they're making more space for teenagers today, and how they are impacting the streets and what they're doing that's against the law. I think that instead of expanding prisons for teenagers that cannot get the ability to have an education and to go through life successfully, they should put more money into schools to prevent more prisoners going on.
So with that being said, some people kind of missed the introduction to Miss Scott coming in today. And I know some people have to leave, and I do understand that. But before we do, could you at least kind of explain to them a little who you are and the things that you've done?
So, as Mr. Knox said, I'm Kipp Scott. I'm an attorney here in the city. For the last 20 years, I've been an attorney here in Philadelphia. For 7.5 years, I worked with the local public defender's office. And for the last 10.5 years, I worked with the federal public defender's office, defending people who were charged with crimes. All of my clients have been charged with criminal crimes that range from misdemeanors, smoking a blunt, to attempted murder, and in the last 10.5 years to federal crimes that range from bank robbery to white-collar fraud. Recently, I left my job because I decided that I didn't want to just be in the courtroom and just represent people. I wanted to be a part of the change that I wanted to see in terms of the way that people were treated. And I decided that I was going to run to be a judge. So I left my job a few weeks ago, and now that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to be a part of the change. And what I want to say to each of you is that it's really important that we don't just decide to vote, and that we don't just have an opinion, but that we be a part of the change that we really want to see. It's not just important that we vote, but that we all get involved in the political process and be a person who can effectuate change. You don't like what your politicians are doing, what your leaders are doing, what your mayor is doing, what your councilperson is doing, then when you get a little older and you have the opportunity, you be the individual who will be making those decisions, because your decisions will impact yourself and the people who you want to move forward. So I decided that I wanted to do that, and that's where I am. Right now, I'm running for election as a judge. The primary is in May, and no matter what happens, I'm not going to have any regrets, because I feel like I'm being a part of the change. And I'm doing what I need to make sure that our people are heard, that they get their fair shot in court, that they're treated with respect and dignity, and that I call it like I see it. I hear the stuff, I hear the evidence, and I just call it like I see it.
I want to open up the floor to questions, so if we want to do that too, we want to have some time. But we want to hear from some people who we didn't get a chance to hear from.
So my question was for like in our reference, like if we were to do this, so I wanted to know how you articulate yourself in your cause to your competition and your political.
To the people that I want to vote for me. So in the community, for judicial candidates, it's a little hard, because most judicial candidates don't have a record the way that politicians do in terms of what they've done in the past. They can talk about what they've done as a lawyer, but they can't talk about what they've done as a judge, because they've never been a judge. So I've never been a judge. I've always been a really, really good lawyer who now wants to be a really, really good judge. And all I can do is say that I can take some of the skills that I've learned as a lawyer, as a trial attorney, and transition those into being a really good judge. So I know all about being in a courtroom. I know all about evidence. That will make me a good judge. My personal experiences, I grew up in the city just like you guys are probably all from, I'm assuming, the West Philadelphia area. I grew up in an area very similar. I grew up in South Philly. And, you know, I grew up in an area where I didn't have much. My family didn't have much. But my mother was really, you know, it was really important to her that we were all educated, and she pushed us to be educated. But I still stayed connected to my roots, to my mom is still down in South Philly, to my community, and made sure that I did things to improve who I am and who the people around me were. So those things also transition into being a good judge, having good judgment, you being able to humanize people, being able to understand people, being able to relate to all people. There are some people, I think, at least on the bench, who don't have that diverse background, that diverse experience, who look at people as being very black and white. And people are not black and white, they're very, very complex. And one act does not make up who an individual is. And that's just in a criminal context. And you have to remember, judges also sit in family court, where they make decisions about custody and support and divorces. They also sit in civil court, where you have people who are evicted from homes. You need people who are going to be related to all of this city, every segment of this community, every segment of this city, not just those people who they are like. And luckily for me, I've had the opportunity to be able to do that in my work, in my education, and in my involvement in the community. So I just talk about who I am as an individual, what I've done as an individual, both professionally and personally, and I talk about who I am as an individual